Hi, my name's Joe Brewer, and in this short video, I want to share a presentation that I've put together explaining the larger vision for creating culture design labs as a way of helping humanity deal with the global crisis. So first off, let me share that right now it is currently not possible to guide the evolution of social systems in the world. So we have political systems, economies, communities, urban development processes, technology design, and so on that are happening without any ability to set collective actions around shared intention and purpose. And this is a really serious problem for us because of the number of trends that are dominating the changes in the world that take place at an exponential scale. So most of us are familiar with how quickly technology is changing and that we can have paradigm shifts in how we communicate or the tools that we use over a period of a few years. But there are other exponential processes that are dominating in the world today. And just one example to give you a sense is population growth. If you look at the trends in human population in the last 100 years, it's been growing at an exponential rate, which is causing us to have tremendous negative impacts on the planet itself. So these exponential change processes are dominating in the world, and this is causing very powerful forms of cultural evolution, yet that evolution is not happening in a conscious or intentional manner. So we need to change this situation quite desperately. And the reason we need to do this is that the current trajectory for our planetary system is overshoot and collapse. So we can see this with global warming, where we're moving into a realm of runaway climate change if we continue to increase the amount of fossil fuels burned each year, grow the human population, and deplete more resources as we drive the planet further and further into a mode of instability and disruption. So this trajectory, whether we're thinking about it in terms of the models developed in the 1970s by the Club of Rome, or more recently by the Stockholm Resilience Center, where they have 9 planetary boundaries, any of which get crossed and planetary civilization becomes untenable. Currently, according to the best estimates, we've crossed 4 of those 9 boundaries. So what that means is we're currently on a pathway to catastrophic collapse at a planetary scale, and we need to learn how to guide cultural evolution for our societies, and we need to do this very quickly. And one of the things that gets in the way of doing this is that the knowledge that we need to apply to be able to guide the evolution of our very complex societies is mostly fragmented and in silos at the moment. One place where you can really see this is in universities, where we've organized our knowledge into academic departments and disciplines, where biology and chemistry are governed by separate researchers and management practices, hiring practices, admissions for students, and so on. And so we have this situation where our knowledge is deeply fragmented, yet all of our effective interventions and solutions need to be holistic and integrated. So we have to do design work on the process of creating knowledge itself to help us make our problems solvable. And this is what I call the predicament of knowledge, which has 2 parts. One is that we are making new knowledge at such a fast rate that we can't keep up with it. This is one of the patterns of exponential growth in the world today. When we have several million people getting PhDs every year, we're producing more knowledge than we know how to handle, and it's coming more quickly than we can possibly process. So the predicament of knowledge has 2 parts. One is that there's too much of it for us to handle in any kind of reasonable and effective way. And the other is that we're creating new knowledge at such a fast pace that our ability to guide social learning, to incorporate and assimilate this knowledge into our institutions and practices, is greatly mismatched. We learn socially much more slowly than we are currently producing knowledge. So this predicament is very problematic because, by the assessments I've been doing, seems like we have all of the knowledge we need to solve all of the major problems in the world, and yet it's fragmented and it's not being implemented or absorbed into our institutions rapidly enough for us to do so. So we have this predicament of knowledge that we need to deal with. But now let me give you a really inspiring idea, which is that every community on Earth, whether it's a small village or a mega city with millions of people, is potentially a field site for doing research in applied cultural evolution. What I mean by this is that we can bring the best integrative social sciences together and create field sites for monitoring and tracking social change and all communities on Earth. And we can create networks of them to help us learn. So as the world changes, we're going to find that the ability to learn about how each community is either adapted to its environment or not will help us to learn this skill of guiding cultural evolution at large scales. Now, of course, some of our communities are going to prove to be resilient and adaptive in their environments, and they are going to continue to grow, flourish, and thrive into the future. But that's not the case for all communities. There's one estimate that really stands out to me, which is that in the Great Plains of North America in the United States, 80% of the cities and towns that have populations of less than 50,000 people are going into decline. What this means is that we're going to see many of these small to medium-sized towns disappear and go away in the next 50 to 100 years. So while some communities are going to flourish and thrive, quite a few others are going to die out. And this is Darwinian evolution in play, where the things that are well adapted to their environments will remain fit and be able to continue to exist, whereas those things that are not adapted to their environment will die off and go away. Now, if we talk about the places that will become resilient, what we see is that there's a lot that's already known about what makes a community resilient. And the picture I'm showing here is of the Subaks in the country of Bali. And Subaks are these tiered form of agriculture that they use for growing rice. And what's amazing about the Subaks is that they're well adapted to their environment, that they're appropriately diverse in the management practices for how different farmers manage the land, and it's deeply integrated into the political, economic, and spiritual traditions of their culture. And so they're able to be self-moderating, and this is a cultural tradition that has lasted for a very long time. So we actually know quite a lot, especially from research by historians and anthropologists, about how to create resilient communities. But what we don't have right now is the ability to set up monitoring and guiding of current communities to have more of them become so. Now I want to pause here for a moment and draw attention to something that I think is extremely important. And that is that right now we are leaving which communities thrive and become resilient and which communities collapse and go away entirely up to chance. So this is because we are not becoming active managers of cultural evolution. And what I want to share with you is this idea that life is too precious to be left to chance. So we need to be rigorous and systematic about building an applied science of cultural evolution for communities around the world. And this is where we get to the idea of culture design. Culture design, as I like to describe it, is an integrative social science that can help us guide the evolution of entire communities so that the individual people within them and the entire communities become more healthy and resilient in a changing world. And we need to do this during a time when there are going to be more disruptions, disasters, and crises than we've ever had to deal with in the history of our species. So with all of those exponential trends driving change in the world, we're going to see more hurricanes and tornadoes, wildfires. We are going to see more erratic weather and unpredictability for managing agriculture and food production. Things like this that are going to happen all over the world because of global warming and the deterioration of our environment. And so during the very time when all of those disruptions are happening are when we need to build this field of culture design and create networks of communities around the world that are operating as field sites for applied cultural evolution. Now, in my work to help build this capacity for culture design labs around the world, I'm currently partnering with the Oregon Research Institute in Eugene, which is a place that has a tradition for more than 60 years of building the field of public health and applied behavioral science. And of course, there's the Cultural Evolution Society that I've been the coordinator to help build, which currently has about 2,000 researchers around the world in more than 50 countries who study cultural change from a variety of different disciplinary perspectives, all of which are informed by an evolutionary approach. And then there's the Evolution Institute, which is a small nonprofit that coordinates the bringing together of different kinds of research in evolutionary studies, both biological and cultural evolution, and helps to translate that into materials that are easily understood, while also doing things like the project that we have to build the Cultural Evolution Society, which was a project incubated at the Evolution Institute. And so I'm in the process of building formal relationships between these institutions and other partners so that we can build this capacity for guiding evolution at a planetary scale. And so, with that in mind, I say, let's get together and play. We have very important work to do, time is short, and this vision for creating field sites for applied cultural evolution in communities around the world is needed more urgently than ever before. Thank you, and let's get to work.